Have you ever joined a group where you felt like you finally found a place where you belong, a place where you could grow and progress and improve in skills that you've been trying to improve in for ages? And then a few months in, you realize that everyone else outside the group thinks that this group is completely toxic or absolutely incompetent in the skills that you thought you would gain from them. And then you're left wondering if you made the right choice to join them. Has this ever happened to you? Because it's happened to me, and not just once, but twice.
While AuthorTube does contain many helpful videos, we should not forget that many of these videos are produced by well-intentioned writers who have never published books themselves. Therefore, they're just kind of repeating the same information, misbegotten though it may be, without ever having tested it and finding out if this information is any good.
Wattpad is where your trust in humanity dies. Because Wattpad is run by like middle schoolers. In middle school, that's when it was at its peak.
Hi, my author pen name is Lorraine Maniseda, and this channel is a little experiment that I'm curious to see the result of. Thank you for being here, and I hope you are entertained. Little background on how I started writing. I started writing when I was really young, but it was never that encouraged. I even got in trouble in high school, and so I kind of kept it on the back burner as a talent I had or as a skill I wanted to progress in. And so when I got into uni to do my engineering degree, which is what I graduated in, I used to write a lot as a way to relieve stress from my engineering degree. And so that's when I started taking writing seriously, because after having written a few short stories, I got good reviews and so with my friends, and so I started to want to do something serious. That was when I joined Wattpad. So that was in around 2011, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the community I built in there. And then a little bit after that, after I graduated, that was when, or just before I graduated, I discovered AuthorTube and BookTube, and that was just through my recommended videos on YouTube. I guess I was just searching for how to write or how to improve my skills, and so that's how I came to join these two groups. I'll focus on talking about AuthorTube in this video, and then I'll talk about Wattpad in a future video. I had been watching AuthorTube videos for a while, and then finally at some point, I think about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, that's when I saw two massive AuthorTube books. And these two books had come from two of the biggest channels on AuthorTube. Or at least, they had like the most subscribers and everything. And so I was really excited to hear the reviews from these two channels, because I'd been watching them a lot. And yeah, it didn't go so well. Both books were panned generally. The feedback wasn't that good. They're not the only AuthorTube books whose reviews I had seen, but these two were the ones that really blew up in terms of negative reviews and in terms of setting up the view of people's opinion on AuthorTubers and the advice that they give for writing.
You have a big channel that gives out writing advice, and then the book doesn't really follow the writing advice given.
However, the criticism and the point of this particular video is you cannot for years present yourself as an expert and then publish a shitty book and pretend nothing is wrong and then keep publishing writing advice.
Because these new authors are simply repeating information that they've heard from other YouTube videos, this makes it possible for echo chambers to form, wherein no one's really actually saying anything helpful, it's just catchy. Many have also observed that some of the best-known AuthorTubers don't actually follow their own advice most of the time, which has understandably led people to question, is your advice actually any good? If it's so good, why aren't you following it?
So these two books were The Cyborg Tinkerer by Meg Latour and The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moresi. And these two books exploded out of the gate. And the thing is, these two AuthorTubers had a massive platform, or both of them had their own massive platforms, and they were really good at marketing. And so when their books came out, there was no way for them to not get a huge audience, because that's what they'd been building at for years and years. And then finally they had this book, and their fan base was chomping at the beat to get these books, to see what they had been alluding to with their writing advice, to see if that was being used in the books, to see just what kind of books these AuthorTubers who had given so much good advice would write. And the result of that was, like I said before, it was really negative, and it drove the opinion of AuthorTube in general, because they carried such a huge percentage of AuthorTube. And that was where a bit of a downward spiral of AuthorTube began, for me at least.
Another complaint that I see from a lot of readers is that AuthorTubers a lot of times just don't have the credentials to qualify themselves to be giving writing advice in the first place.
So I was a little angry that I spent money on a book that by the third chapter I was like, no, I don't like this at all. I don't think it's great. And other people were angry.
Reading this book was as if I had put the ghost chili pepper on my tongue, sniffed it like cocaine in my nose, rubbed it into my eyes, and stuck it up my bum. That's what reading this book felt like.
I think for many readers, realizing that a lot of AuthorTubers were building up a fan base, basically, for their books with their channels, that was their main goal, rather than improving in the art of writing and stuff like that. Instead, they were building up this base where if they wrote a book, they knew that they would have a ready market for it, and it would be in the hundreds of thousands. I think that when readers found out that that was the main purpose of their channel, that's what hit them most, because they bought into the fact that these people were experts. And for a lot of them, they actually brought in proof. They said they were working in certain places that gave them the experience and the knowledge and the expertise to give out this advice. And then so that was, for the readers, important. And so when these books came out and they weren't as perfect as the persona in these channels made them out to be, then that's where the biggest hurt for the readers came from. But that wasn't the only problem that readers had with AuthorTubers.
Another complaint that I see from a lot of people about AuthorTubers is that the advice they give is basic or beginner. And I would agree with a lot of that. Some AuthorTubers do give very basic advice where you can just kind of Google it and you're like, why did I watch this 20-minute video when I could Google it and get the answer in 5 seconds?
The issue with a lot of this AuthorTuber bullshit is they will take easy, safe stuff. Now, is the writing advice useful? Yes, the writing advice is useful. But what is the writing advice? 99% of the time, the writing advice is basic stuff that you can Google. I'm not even sure if they plagiarize from each other, but none of them seem to have a unique take. All of them, most of the time, just regurgitate the same BS.
The opinion that AuthorTube advice is really fundamental and not nearly good enough for intermediate or expert writers is something that I have heard of and I've read from comments from the very beginning of exploring AuthorTube, if I'm to be honest. And the thing is, I don't disagree. But what we have to remember is that they are beginner writers and they are people who are just starting their skill journey in writing. For example, I was an engineer before I started taking writing seriously, and so I needed that beginner information. I needed a place to start, and these YouTubers gave us advice from where we could start. And then I would extrapolate the information. So I would go on and use Google. And then I would get better advice, more advanced advice. I would practice my writing. I would put it out there. And then I would get feedback and then improve even more from there. Because I quickly realized that every author and every book needs different advice. And having somewhere to begin was important. While I do recognize the flaws of AuthorTube and everything associated with it, one other thing I recognize is the fact that the discussion of all these flaws, the discussion of mistakes made, and everything that has been mentioned previously in this video, that is a lesson. Humans don't just learn from the success of others or even themselves. In fact, success is a terrible teacher. What really teaches us to reach past our limits are our mistakes. The thing about mistakes is that we don't just have to learn from our mistakes. We can also learn from other people's mistakes. And so looking at where someone went wrong and then trying to figure out how to have done that in a different way, that's actually a good thing. And it's sad that we vilify people who make mistakes. It's sad that we punish them, that we talk down on them, that we kind of tear them down just for making mistakes. And the fact is, if you're not making mistakes, then what are you doing? Like, people who are trying stuff, people who are going beyond their capacity, beyond their limits, those people always make mistakes, and then they become better for it after they've learned the lessons from their mistakes. And so mistakes are a part of the whole process. And the funny thing is that these two books, The Cyborg Tinkerer and The Savior's Sister and The Savior's Champion, or 3 books, those books had errors, that's fine, but it was the discussion of these errors as I continued watching reviews of these books that actually helped me shape my own books. And for that, I will be forever grateful, because I was writing my book at the time when these books were being discussed and reviewed. And because of that, I got to be so much better at what I was writing. I got to fix a few character flaws. I got to fix plot holes. I got to even come up with new stuff. And so I'm grateful for Jenna Moreci. I'm grateful for Meglator for being brave enough to actually put up a book that wasn't perfect, but I'm pretty sad that they were vilified the way they were. And I hope that that won't stop their writing journey, although I don't know how it'll go. I'm really hoping that this won't stop other people's writing journey, because they're afraid that they'll be torn down to shreds in the same way. So let's discuss how these 2 books actually helped me develop my own books. Despite how it was marketed, to me, The Cyborg Tinkerer came off as an action-adventure quest story. And that's a story I really love. I love writing action-adventure quest stories, and the book I was working on was definitely an action-adventure quest story. But what really caught my attention about Meg Latour's book was the concept of polyamory. So I'm not sure if this is a spoiler. It's not really a spoiler because this is a subplot in the book, but I was struggling with the relationships in my book, and so I decided to try polyamory. And I had seen Meg Latour's example being criticized, but I started to realize as I took on the challenge myself, and I figured I would ask myself, if it was me writing a polyamorous relationship, what would it look like? And then I found out that I would be writing about 4 relationships. So there's a relationship between A and B, the relationship between A and C, the relationship between B and C, and then the overall relationship between A, B, and C. And that is quite the undertaking. I can see why it was difficult for Meg Latour. In fact, it's why I took inspiration from the second book and that is the Savior's Champion. So in the Savior's Champion and the Savior's Sister, the inspiration I got from it, again, it's action adventure, and that is just my favorite, as I've said before. It had a dual POV of the same story using a companion book. So the Savior's Sister is the same story but from a different point of view. And I loved this concept because it helped me extend my world building, especially the subplot, the romance subplot. It was really useful for that. And so I decided to break my book into 2 trilogies. So the first trilogy is from the human point of view, and then the second trilogy is from the vampire's point of view. And then I took on the criticism that Jenna Moresi got from her portrayal of the story in both books to make sure that the second book actually added to the overall experience. I think that was one of the criticisms she got, is that the second book wasn't different enough from the first to make it interesting enough for the people who are reading it. And so I took on that criticism and tried to make mine a little bit more different, so that, but still connected, so that it would add to the experience of reading the work. And having the polyamorous kind of relationship, having the splitting the worlds into human and vampire, so that you get both aspects from this post-apocalyptic world. It was really cool. It was really fun. And thanks to Jenna, thanks to Meglator, I was able to craft this 2 trilogies in a way that I would have not been able to do before. I had seen these books and I had listened to the reviews and the critiques and the breakdowns of the books from AuthorTubers. And so this is how these 2 books really helped shape my own. Before I end this video, I'd like to extend the offer that I made from the last video, and that is, if you think you're interested in any way in reading my books, please send me an email on this email address, and I will send you the first book of Hadley's trilogy completely free on PDF through email, and you can see for yourself what you think. And if you like it, then you're welcome to find the other 2 books on Amazon and continue the trilogy. So yeah, if you've reached this far, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming to this into this journey with me, and I hope that I have added value to your day. Have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon.